In this video, we're going to cover the hover method. And of course, that'll allow us to do some things when we hover over an element and when we hover off of it. Now, the hover method actually takes two functions, and we'll get to that in a little bit. And the reason for that is we need two separate lines of code, one code when we hover on, and then one set of code when we hover off. You can't be in both of those states at the same time, so that's why we need two different functions. And that's why the hover method, again, takes two functions. So what element are we going to target with our hover? Let's go ahead with our favorite section right here. So we'll put in #right. And then let's go ahead and we're going to target all of the divs. This is kind of interesting. So when we hover over this right section here, all the rest of the divs will be affected. Kind of interesting, huh? And let's go ahead and we'll use the CSS method. So I've got the code typed out. I'm just going to copy and paste it in here. So this first function covers the hover. And then the second function, which we're about to add, is the spot for when we hover off. So think of these as placeholders almost. The first function in the hover method will always be for when you're hovering over the element. And the second function will always cover, so when we hover over it, we want the background colors of all of our divs, because we're selecting all the divs here, to turn yellow. And it will only occur, by the way, when we hover over this right section. That's it. So you can see how that works. All right, so now we need to add another function, something we haven't really done yet. And the way we do that is we got to close this function. And of course, we do that with a squiggly bracket. And then we use a comma. That will actually separate the two functions. So let's go ahead and copy this function now because we can reuse it. Now we're only going to copy it up to here because we've already got our closing bracket right here. So let's go ahead and just copy and paste this in. Let's clean this up a little bit. And let's do something a little bit different for when we hover off. So we'll change the color to gray. How about that? So remember, this first function covers the hover on, and in this spot, this function covers the hover off. That's the way it works. So again, the hover method accepts two functions. And let's actually put some comments in here. So we'll say hover over, and then we'll put this here and this, and we'll say this is for the hover off. Or better yet, let's be a little bit more descriptive. We'll say not hovered. Whoops. Okay, so let's go ahead and save this. Let's go ahead and close the page out, and we'll just refresh our page here. Load this back up. And let's see if this works. And it does. Now, notice, I'm hovered over it now, so this gets activated, right? Our first function. But as soon as I hovered off of it, look, this second function gets activated because we're not hovered over this anymore, and it turns to gray. So see how that works? So just remember, we attach the hover method to this right section over here. So this is the one that's getting affected. If we hover over these other sections, it's not going to trigger because we only have this right section selected. So that's the only one that affects the hover on and off. And then we said, hey, every div will be affected when we hover on and off of this right section. As you know, when we hover over, we get a yellow, and when we hover off, we get a gray. Now, you can add other methods, any method you want to this. You can do this hover on and off with any method. And we'll do that in the next video. We'll actually use some different methods to associate with the hover method. See you guys in the next video.